The village lay silent beneath a bruised sky, the kind of silence that follows too much noise, the kind that feels alive, listening. Smoke curled from broken rooftops, drifting across the road where she stood, motionless, breathing through the metallic taste of ash. Somewhere beyond the hills, gunfire murmured like a dying storm. And in her head, his voice replayed, calm, certain, and then suddenly gone. If I don't make it back, static, then nothing. That's how it ended. That's how she knew he was gone. But endings don't always mean it's over. Not for her. Not when there was still a chance, however small, to bring him home. She adjusted the strap on her rifle, the leather rough against her palm, and whispered the question that had been haunting her since sunrise. How far would you go for the one who never gave up on you? It wasn't courage driving her forward now. It was something sharper, quieter, duty wrapped in guilt, faith tangled with fear. She took one last look at the burning horizon and stepped into the ruins alone, knowing she was already too late. Before we go further into her mission, pause for a second. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. And if stories like this grip you the way this one began, make sure you've subscribed, because what happens next will test everything she thought she knew about loyalty and survival. 12 hours earlier, the world had still felt steady. The briefing room was bright, humming with the low static of radios and the soft rustle of papers, a kind of order that made people believe nothing could go wrong. The commander stood at the front, calm and sharp, tracing lines across the map with the back of his pen. In and out in under 30 minutes, he said, voice even, confident. No unnecessary risks. She watched him, not just his words, but the pauses between them. He never spoke like a man who doubted the plan, but something in his eyes told her he already sensed what was coming. She sat across the table, silent, memorizing every detail, terrain, exits, contingencies, but mostly the way he trusted her to understand without being told. It wasn't a friendship. It was a pact made of discipline and unspoken faith. When he said, "You'll be my second set of eyes," she didn't answer. She just nodded, because that was enough. The room emptied after the briefing, leaving behind the faint scent of coffee and anticipation. He lingered, glanced at her once more, and said quietly, "Some missions don't go as planned, Lieutenant. If that happens, adapt." She almost smiled. He always said that. But this time, it felt different. Like a warning disguised as routine. A message she wouldn't understand until the world around her burned. The convoy rolled out before dawn, engines low, headlights off, cutting through the fog like ghosts moving toward their fate. She rode in the second truck, eyes scanning the ridge lines, the dirt road trembling beneath the wheels. The commander was up front, headset on, steady as always, his voice a calm rhythm through the comms. "Stay tight. Eyes up. We're almost through." For a while, everything felt routine, until it didn't. The first explosion hit without sound, a flash of light, a heartbeat later, the roar. The lead truck lifted off the ground, torn apart mid-sentence. Then another blast, closer this time. The sky filled with fire and dust. She shouted coordinates into the radio, but all she got back was static. The world had gone deaf. Bullets sliced through the smoke, tracers carving lines across the dark. She grabbed her rifle, covering the commander's flank as he tried to rally what was left of the team. "Fall back," he ordered, but there was nowhere to go. Every direction led to fire. She saw him turn toward her, one brief glance, before a grenade burst between them, throwing her hard into the dirt. When she woke, her ears rang with silence. The ground around her was littered with gear, broken radios, motionless shapes she didn't want to recognize. And in the distance, voices. Foreign. Laughing. Through the blur, she saw him, the commander, dragged to his knees, hands bound, defiance still burning in his face. She tried to crawl forward, but the world tilted, heavy and cruel. The convoy was gone. The mission was dead. And for the first time, she realized, command wouldn't be coming back for any of them. By the time she made it back to base, the sun was bleeding into the horizon. Her uniform was torn, her voice raw from shouting into dead radios. She stormed into the command tent, eyes blazing. "We have to move now," she said, dropping her rifle on the table. "He's alive. I saw them take him." The room went still. A colonel looked up from a map, expression cold, detached. "We're not sending anyone. Not without intel." The area's gone hostile. She stared at him, disbelief breaking into anger. You're leaving him? It's over, he said flatly. We don't risk more lives for one man. For a moment, no one spoke. The hum of generators filled the silence, louder than reason. She wanted to shout, to tear the tent apart, but instead, she turned away, jaw tight. That was the moment something inside her fractured. Orders no longer meant obedience. As she walked out into the fading light, her reflection caught on the side mirror of a Jeep. Eyes hollow, face streaked with dirt. She realized then, if command wouldn't go back for him, she would. Alone. And she wouldn't ask permission to do what was right. That night, the base slept under the hum of generators and false security. She didn't. In her quarters, she peeled the insignia from her sleeve, one thread at a time. The symbol of obedience she no longer believed in. The uniform stayed, but the rank was gone. She wasn't a soldier now. She was something else. Something the rules couldn't control. She spread a stolen map across her bunk, tracing the red line of enemy movement with a trembling finger. Every mark meant danger, every route a death sentence. But she wasn't thinking about survival anymore, only purpose. The commander had once told her, when the orders stop making sense, listen to your gut. Tonight, she did. She packed light, a silenced rifle, 3 clips, a field knife, a broken compass, and a photo folded so many times it was soft around the edges. The team, before it all went wrong. Then she slipped out into the darkness. Past the perimeter lights, the air felt heavier, alive with risk. She crossed the border on foot, each step erasing the line between duty and defiance. Out here, no one would come if she called. No backup, no extraction, only silence, and the promise she'd made to a man who never quit, even when the world did. By dawn, she reached the ridge overlooking the valley and froze. Below her, an entire enemy camp stretched across the plain like a scar. Trucks, tents, fuel drums, lines of soldiers moving in formation. It wasn't a hideout, it was an army. And in the center, a row of civilians knelt under guard, hands bound, heads bowed. She counted them, 15, maybe 20, too many to save, too few to ignore. Through her scope, she searched for him. At first, all she saw was movement, shadows, uniforms, rifles slung over tired shoulders. Then the lens caught a flash of silver, a dog tag glinting in the smoke. Him, the commander, bruised, tied to a post, eyes open but unfocused. They hadn't broken him, not yet. He was watching the civilians, forced to witness what he couldn't stop. Her pulse slowed. This was no rescue. This was an execution ground. She lay flat in the dirt, breathing through clenched teeth, mind racing through tactics that all ended the same way, failure. Even if she struck, they'd find her in seconds. Even if she got to him, there'd be no way out. A gust of wind shifted the smoke, revealing the banners, foreign insignias painted over captured vehicles. It wasn't just vengeance anymore, it was politics. This massacre was meant to send a message. And somewhere deep inside, fear mixed with fury. She tightened her grip on the rifle, dirt caking her gloves. If she waited, they'd die. If she moved, she'd die with them. But she'd come this far for one reason, not to survive, but to make sure someone did. She set the match to the rag and let the flame lick the first barrel, watching the orange bloom swallow the night. Flames answered like an animal released, hungry, loud, immediate. Alarms bellowed and lights cracked on across the camp, turning shadows into moving targets. That was the point. Chaos is a language soldiers speak without permission. Once spoken, it erases plans and creates openings where none existed. Smoke rolled low, thick and choking, and she used it as cover, moving from shadow to shadow with the kind of calm that comes from practice and necessity. Her first shot was a question, one round through an engine block, quiet, precise, enough to seed confusion. Then a suppressive burst to draw eyes away from the courtyard. Explosions echoed, fuel drums, a rigged vehicle, a hidden cache she'd wired earlier, and the camp dissolved into motion. Men ran, shouted, collided. She flowed through the confusion like water through cracked stone, every movement economical, every breath measured. Targets presented themselves, and she took them. Sentries, gunners, a man grabbing a radio. Her rifle tasted iron and smoke. Her hands kept their work steady. Each breath, Each trigger pull was a promise to the man tied to the post. She could not afford a single wasted movement. When she reached the inner ring, the air tasted like victory and ash. The camp was a storm she'd started, and now she had one shot, one chance to turn noise into rescue. Through the smoke and chaos, she saw him, slumped against a post, head bowed, the faint rise and fall of his chest barely visible through the flicker of firelight. For a moment, she thought she was too late. Then his eyes opened, searching through the haze, and locked on hers as if his mind refused to believe what his eyes were showing him. She knelt beside him, cutting through the ropes with trembling hands, the world around them roaring with gunfire and collapsing metal. "You weren't supposed to come," he rasped, voice cracked and broken. She almost smiled. "Then you don't know me," she whispered, pulling his arm over her shoulder. Every step was a battle. He was heavier than she remembered, and every explosion felt like the earth trying to drag them back. But the mind works differently when you've already chosen the impossible. She didn't see the distance left, only the next step, the next breath, the next heartbeat that kept him alive. Behind them, flames devoured the camp, each firelight flash reflecting off her dirt-streaked face like proof that defiance has a pulse. By the time they reached the ridge, the night wind hit them, cold, clean, real. He turned to look back, disbelief and pride tangled in his expression. She didn't. Some battles are won by looking forward, not back. The camp burned, but they were alive, and for now, that was enough. The ridge that promised safety turned into a trap. From the tree line below, enemy shadows began to emerge, dozens, maybe more, fanning out with precision that only meant one thing. They'd been tracked. She dragged the commander behind a broken wall, checked her ammo, half a clip, 2 grenades, a combat knife. That was it. The wind carried their shouts closer, echoing like a countdown she couldn't stop. Her arms ached, lungs burned, but the quiet voice in her head, the one that never accepted defeat, whispered, "Hold." The first shot rang out, sharp and controlled. 1 target down, 3 more advancing. She moved like instinct itself. Duck, fire, reload, roll. Her body operating on memory while her mind refused to accept the math of survival. Every bullet she fired wasn't just to keep them away. It was to buy 1 more second for the man who had once risked everything for her. The commander tried to speak, to tell her to leave him, but she silenced him with a look, steady, unshakable. Then, through the chaos, came a faint rumble. Not from the ground, from the sky. The kind of sound soldiers learn to pray for, but rarely hear in time. Helicopters. She exhaled once, long and deep, as if the universe itself had granted her one small mercy. She fired her last round, not in desperation, but in victory, because she knew now they were going home. Days later, the battlefield was gone, replaced by quiet hills and an unmarked wind that carried only the scent of dust and memory. She stood before a row of nameless graves, boots still stained with ash that no amount of rain could wash clean. No cameras, no ceremony, just silence, and the knowledge that some victories could never be spoken aloud. The commander stood beside her, his arm in a sling, gaze fixed on the horizon. He tried to thank her, but words faltered, because what she did wasn't for gratitude. It was for the people who never made it back. She placed her dog tags on one of the headstones, the metal catching the morning light before sinking into the earth. For a moment, the world held still. No war, no orders, no waiting. Just breath and heartbeat. When the commander finally broke the silence, his voice was low. "They'll never know what you did." She smiled faintly. "I still on the graves." "They don't have to," she said. "You don't need recognition when the mission is survival." Then she turned, walking away from the field that remembered everything, a shadow fading into the light of her own silence.